All right, welcome to the Mandatory, another live show for you on this Thursday. Well, I guess morning if you're on the West Coast, and afternoon if you're on the East Coast, like Brian is. And of course, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button as well. It helps the channel grow. But most importantly, Brian, we've got some pretty big news that came out just recently. And this one, I believe, is not good for boxing because Alycia Baumgardner, undisputed champion, tested positive before her July fight. And this brings a lot of questions. A lot of people are mad about it. Some people have different opinions, but what are your thoughts on everything?
Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't know we were going to start here. I thought we were going to start softer. Listen, I'll go on for a minute, but I think people need to be clear on like what is kind of actually going on, because I think a lot of people are just making fun of her, and then a lot of people are just jumping to her defense when we don't actually know anything. Like, do you know like what's actually going on here? Because I don't. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So the two drugs that were to be found in Alycia Baumgardner's system. I don't know. Should I be still saying allegedly, even though reports came out and she basically confirmed it? What's journalistically responsible here, you think, Chantelle?
You let me know. You go with whatever you think is proper. You're the one. This is what you're talking about. So it comes from you.
Okay, so totally leaving me out here on a ledge is fine. Just kidding. Anabolic steroid, mesterolone, right? This is one of the ones that was in her system, according to the report and according to a statement that she released. And this is, on my research, mainly used to treat low levels of testosterone. Found out that this has been in the systems of some runners, some weightlifters, a softball athlete in Canada got banned 3 years for doing this. Julio Rey, Spanish long distance runner, got 2 years for this in 1999, was actually quite successful after. And this was interesting. Alycia Baumgardner is going to fight to clear her name because she says that this is something that she didn't know was in her system, like played that card, which we've heard before. In one case, historically, it was actually true. Diana Yastremska, people who don't know, tennis player, who was 29th in the world, almost top 20 at one point a couple years ago. She had this same drug that Alycia Baumgardner tested positive for in her system. The test was taken November 2020. They found out in January, so kind of similar timeline where it was a month or two after. They found out the test was positive in her system, and she was provisionally suspended as they did the research. Fought to clear her name, missed Australian Open. It took a 6-month process, but then they basically let her off the hook and said that there was no negligence on her part. The suspension was lifted. She was cleared and was playing again right away. Now, she hasn't been as good since, but she was playing again right away. And I think if you're Alycia Baumgardner, that's sort of the scenario you'd be looking at here. In terms of that being overturned and you clearing your name, that's one way to be doing it. The other drug in question, methanolone, which has another name, a trade name called primobolan. I hope I'm pronouncing these things right. Also anabolic steroid. This one, when I looked it up and did some research, it was linked to Alex Rodriguez in 2009. And also Barry Bonds, allegedly, during his alleged steroid peak in 2000, 2001. I think we still have to use allegedly. I'm not sure what the rules are with Barry Bonds. But this drug was also allegedly in Alycia Baumgardner's system. And Hedo Turkoglu also took this, apparently, and was suspended 20 games in 2013. So with all that being said, this is where we are with Alycia Baumgardner. Lou DiBella, who promotes Christina Linardatu, who Alycia Baumgardner beat in July, came out and was like, hey, this is a real drug, said in the ESPN piece that he was quoted in. And he basically said, you can imagine how Linardatu is feeling right now. If this is what's being reported, this is serious stuff. This is a real PED. The only question I would ask for you, Chantelle, is just basically, what do you think boxing from an in-ring standpoint, the super featherweight division, the potential fight with Amanda Serrano, if Alycia Baumgardner gets suspended for a year or two, what could things look like, I guess, in the division now going forward if she has to step away for a while because of this?
I don't even think that's the question that we should be focusing on. I think the question should be what will happen to her career? How will her career be tainted? What does this mean for boxing? I think that's the bigger question.
Sure.
It's not about
answer that one.
Right? It's not. I don't think it's really about. Oh well, definitely that fight with Amanda Serrano is not going to happen. I think if Alycia Baumgardner doesn't get proven innocent, if her, like she said, she didn't know the substance was obviously in her system, but everyone says that, right? That's usually what happens. So, and you know what? Maybe she didn't. Like, we don't know. Like, maybe she truly didn't know that it was in her system. But I think this does taint her career. She's the undisputed champion. So this is not a good look for boxing, period. I believe Lou DiBella also said that he would like standardized testing for big fights. And I do agree with Lou. I do agree with Lou because I also think if you come out with this type of substance before a big fight, you shouldn't fight in it. They got to call the fight because I don't think that's fair. What about you? You can answer your own question. What do you think is going to happen in the division then?
Well, yeah, to get on that, it's not fair to her opponent either, who had to fight Christina Linardatu, right? And I'll note a couple other things from the press release after what I'm about to say, which is basically, I agree with all of that. She's gonna take a big hit if it comes out that she wasn't negligent in the process from the standpoint of
Barry Bonds isn't in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
If Alycia Baumgardner, if this turns out to be true and Barry Bonds isn't in the Hall of Fame and there's been no like clear evidence for Barry, what are we saying about Alycia Baumgardner? Because I believe Barry should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. But I also think that drugs are seen as worse in baseball than they are in boxing. And even though I don't think that it should be an either or. I think this should both be bad. But look, she's screwed if she doesn't come out evading the suspension like the tennis player I mentioned before did. A longer term suspension than just a provisional one. Right now, there hasn't been a suspension or anything. Matchroom is doing their investigation, whatever the case may be. I think one of the things that her career would take a hit. I think one of the things that could happen is, or not could happen, because I don't know if this is actually going to happen. One of the things you could do in her absence, if she's gone and you have to strip her of all the titles, because that's another thing that will happen here is if she's gone for a year, 2 years, whatever the ban is, if there's a ban, if she doesn't clear her name, then yeah, you'd be looking at new champions across the super featherweight division, new opportunities for a bunch of women in and around that weight class. There was supposed to be a World Boxing Super Series that never happened of super featherweights. And maybe that's something that you can reboot in Alycia Baumgardner's absence. I don't know, but there's no doubt she's going to take a hit. Other boxers have survived this, and you could argue that some probably shouldn't have. But
let hold that thought right there. Yeah. I think because it's Alycia Baumgardner and because she's a woman, I think she's going to get it harder than a man would.
A black woman too.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that. She's going to get it way harder. People are going to be like, strip her of her titles. They're going to taint her name.
They're doing that now. They're doing that already.
But here's the thing. It's like, when we talk about strip titles and I go back to baseball, like the Houston Astros cheated. They should have been stripped of the World Series against the Dodgers. Yeah, they cheated, yo.
That's a little different.
They should have been stripped. I'm also a Dodgers fan, so I'm like, take the World Series away from them. You know what I mean?
But that's a little different because everybody in baseball was doing it. They just got caught.
I still don't believe that.
It's the same thing with SMU football in the 1980s.
I know.
They were just more egregious with it. They got the death penalty, but everyone in the Southwest Conference before it disbanded was doing that too in the 1980s.
But still, I still think it's extremely unfair. I don't think that's a real championship, but that's my opinion. I do want to say though, going back to Alycia Baumgardner, and by the way, we are going to get to your comments. Actually, let's get to some of them right now. Shout out to everyone that is on the chat, on the live stream. We do want to get your thoughts on this situation before we move on. And of course, we're still going to talk about it a little bit more. Nerd says, and Nerd, a friend of the show, I believe anything she says. So Nerd is
why's that, Nerd? Huh? I'm not saying I don't, but
our guy Hustle Man, strip and suspend until proven innocent. I'm not mad at that. But I mean, at the same time,
I think it's too early. But Chantelle, would you strip her right away?
No, because if she's innocent, then why are we stripping her?
I think you have to. This just happened. I think you have to let more of a process play out. But I,
Isn't it innocent until proven guilty?
yeah, but Hustle Man disagrees. Is his point?
Yeah.
Which there are some things you could be guilty until proven innocent, like perhaps Wander Franco. Google it yourself. Like where people would look at it about in that way. I don't think you strip her right away, but yeah, I think you have to perform the investigation. Like there has to be some sort of due process here. But if she is guilty, you have to strip all the titles. If she's not, then okay, you might. And if it goes long enough, because the investigation with the tennis player whose name is escaping me that I referenced before. Sorry, I'm a casual tennis fan, right? And she was provisionally suspended for 6 months. If the Alycia Baumgardner thing is going to take, let's say, half a year through the rest of the year, at the beginning of next year, I think you have to have a sort of champion in recess situation. You have an interim champion for a couple different titles. Like if it's going to linger on that long, we don't know that yet because it can actually come to something much sooner if there's going to be, a quicker process here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I
I
just
can't
think.
even see the comments, so I'm glad you pulled them up because the chat's not working for me. So you're gonna have to.
Oh, okay. Well, Jesus says steroids wasn't illegal in Major League Baseball. And Jesus, by the way, friend of the show, Jesus, thanks for hopping on. I think you mean Alycia is being set up, not step up. But
Probably.
if I'm wrong, let me know, Jesus. But nonetheless, I go back to the fact that Alycia Baumgardner is the undisputed champion. Not a good look for boxing when you're undisputed champion, one of the faces of women's boxing, one of the up and coming superstars in boxing, period, is Alycia Baumgardner. Let's be serious here. And she tests positive for a substance. And it was before the July fight, right? So you think about everything that went into that. And how is that fair for someone like Christina Linadartu? What is she thinking? How is she feeling? But I do believe that if throughout this whole entire process, even if she's innocent, Alycia Baumgardner is going to get it from the media. She's going to get it from fans because she is a woman, a Black woman at that. And they're going to be harder on her than anyone else. And I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to make this a race thing. This is facts.
Yeah.
This is what it's going to be. And if she ends up, we find out that she isn't innocent, it's going to be even worse for her. And so that's the part, like, that's the unfortunate part. But things are stacked against her at this time. I'm hoping that she is innocent and she didn't know, because there's been a case of that, as you mentioned. But I mean, we're going to have to wait and see and have the investigation and all of that. But nonetheless, I think it's a bad look for boxing, especially for when you think about the fact that women's boxing is on the up and up, and it's on the biggest platform, the biggest stage in the world that it's ever been. For this to happen to one of their superstars, extremely bad look.
She's one of the 5 most popular women in the sport. I would say she's probably
top 2, top 3. Clarissa Shields, Amanda Serrano, and Alycia Baumgardner. I'd probably say top 3.
In terms of just straight popularity, you could argue that. And I would also say that in terms of just fighters in the sport in general, men and women, she's definitely one of the most Googled. And she's probably, in terms of popularity, one of the 20 most. So yeah. And look, hopefully they get the process right, is what I would say. It would suck to see her have to get suspended for a long time for this, but look, if she did it, then you can't be tolerating this shit in this sport. Like this just happened with Dillian White, and we'll see what happens with him. Conor Benn is still trying to fight to clear his name and maintain his innocence, but even though that looks a little shaky, so
apparently it was eggs though. He had ate some eggs and
like an excess of eggs or whatever. Ultimately, like we have to know what we're putting in our bodies, but it's not. I don't think we ever like truly know. But if you're a boxer, you're an athlete, you really have to be on top of that shit. So
this is a good one. Cool Ken, a friend of the show. I'll let you read this one since your chat is not working.
Yeah, Cool Ken, thank you for the comment as always, and please feel free to keep them coming, everybody, and donations especially, because if you donate, we'll drop what we're doing and get to your comment right away. And also, trying to get a little bit of money doing this. So, Cool Ken, thank you for the comment. If she is innocent, there will always be an asterisk by her name. Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of the things that people hold against her, especially as a black woman. They're going to single her out in a different way than if it's somebody else. On a slightly different note, I did go to Michaela Mayer's Instagram to see if she posted anything in half celebration and just like a haha type of thing. Haven't seen anything yet, so that actually was one of the bigger upsets here because I expected direct smoke from Michaela Mayer right away, and we did not get that. So I guess kudos to her for that.
I mean, in hindsight, though, she didn't test positive for anything before the fight with Michaela Mayer, and she still won. So
No,
it's just like,
but you could also you could if you're somebody else, you could, oh, how long has she been doing this, huh? Like what you could go
I
down
don't
that
know.
rabbit hole if you want
I
to.
saw a lot of jokes. I saw a lot of jokes about it, but I think at the end of the day, it's like we got to wait and see what's real and what's not. It is a real drug, though.
Yeah. Like it's
So
not like a bullshit steroid, right? Like
yeah.
I remember when Alexander Povetkin tested dirty when he was gonna fight Deontay Wilder. And this when people say Deontay Wilder hadn't fought nobody, this is before the Tyson Fury stuff. I would always defend him because of this particular fight. Alexander Povetkin was seen as a guy that could give him real work and beat him because Deontay Wilder, quote unquote, had to beat anyone. Deontay Wilder was going to defend his title in Russia, flew to Russia to
Mhm.
defend his title, and then posted a video of himself crying about 48 to 72 hours before the fight started in Russia because Alexander Povetkin tested positive for a drug that was meant to increase his stamina, which in a heavyweight division kind of matters a lot. And Povetkin was suspended and eventually came back because people always come back in the sport. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Alycia Baumgardner regarding that, and she's gonna fight to clear her name. Let me actually read. Let me read that before we get out of here. Two substances. This is from Alycia Baumgardner's
Yeah.
statement because she said that she's going to be updating the people as this is going. So I guess shout out to her for doing that. We'll see if she's actually innocent, but two substances I've never heard of or used in any way, she said in a statement. To be abundantly clear, I know that I never have, never would, and never will take this or any other drug. Not only would doing so be unethical, but it would also be completely contrary to how I've trained my entire career. Both statements, which usually come with denials, we've heard them from everyone, some of whom have had their names cleared, some of whom haven't, and ultimately we'll see how the process plays out.
Yeah, if you have any more comments on the Alycia Baumgardner situation, definitely let us know. Drop some comments below. And remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Before we get out of here, we got to talk about the presser that you were at, Canelo Alvarez and Jermell Charlo. Any thoughts on how that all went?
I'm not gonna lie, of the pressers that I've been to this year, which I guess now is 4 or 5, probably the most respectful of all of them. And hello, John, and thank
Hey,
you for
John.
that. I'm not reading your last name, but thank you for that. Is that your actual last name, John? Comment back and let me know if that's a real last name. I don't know if
It doesn't sound bad.
uh, mm, all right, we're gonna
It's not, it's not, it could, I'm pretty sure maybe that is his last name. I don't know.
for the
McCuck?
audio
McCuck.
for the audio listeners. That's what it is. Don't get me banned off here, yo.
No, I mean
So
it's not there's not an O in there. You know what I mean? The O isn't replacing the U. So I'm just saying.
you know what a cuck is?
No. What is that?
Okay, all right, fellas. We're gonna continue.
No.
We're gonna keep rolling on here.
No.
Don't worry.
No. But it's not a mech in front of it. Do you get what I'm saying?
No. You need to know what the other word is, so that you would retract everything that just
I
happened
think
in
I
the
know
last
what it
60
is.
seconds.
I think I know what it is, but still.
All right, going.
I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but still.
I wish I could see the comments right now.
Okay, wait. No, John says this facts. I've been getting that joke my whole life. No worries.
Okay.
See,
All
now you
right.
made fun of him. Now you made John feel some type of way.
No.
How are you going to do that to one of our supporters? I'm sorry, John. This guy is out of control. He laughs at everything. So just letting you know.
Yeah, I'm a child, John.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
All right, the Canelo Charlo.
So the Canelo Triple G, the Canelo and Jermell.
what are you doing here, man?
The
Get it together. We're on a live show. I can't edit this out for us, okay?
Canelo, Jermell Charlo. Glad I got the right Charlo brother. Yeah, it was the most respectful press conference I've been at this year covering. Shout out to John once again. My apologies. I thought it was very, very, very entertaining in its own way from the standpoint of just observing what's actually happening, but also not much was happening. Because guys are respectful. They shook hands. They nodded heads to each other. They gave each other a lot of respect. I'll tell you what, though, the biggest takeaway that I had, this is the first video I posted when I got out of it. We went to me and my homie Erica from Sporting News. Shout out to her. We went after to where the fighters were coming out of. We saw a whole bunch of people, just fans, huddled around there. And I still had my monopod out with my phone. And I was looking at what they were looking at. And it was like, oh, Canelo's about to come out, because they were all yelling for Canelo's name. And Canelo got done just doing the interviews with like Brian Custer and stuff. This was after we recorded the scrum. He comes out and everybody screaming, yelling, Canelo, Canelo. Like, that dude is still a superstar. It was in the middle of Times Square, basically, that this was going on. They just mobbed him on the way to the car. He had like 8 security guards had to direct him, into the vehicle. To Canelo's credit, was trying to like take photos with some people and like give him handshakes and all these different things, fist bumps and all that. He got into the vehicle. Somebody went like this to him, like at the door, and he did it back, which I found pretty cool. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like some, one of these where they would touch each other's hands. For people on the audio side, I made basically what looked like the NWO for life sign if you watch wrestling in the 1990s. And I think, I just think he's a big superstar that people know that, but I feel like, seeing it, when I saw him fight against Rocky Fielding, the atmosphere was crazy. You know what I mean? At Madison Square Garden, not a place that he fights at a lot. And that was sort of one of my big takeaways from this. Also, Jermell Charlo, a little bit bigger than I think people understand. Like,
a lot bigger. Yeah,
he looked bigger than
Canelo.
Let's talk about this for a second, because this is one.
Wait, let's get to Hustleman's comment first.
Sure.
I don't like these super mega fights with an opponent coming off a long layoff injury. Of course, Jermell Charlo hasn't fought in a minute. Tank versus Ryan, Taylor versus Lopez, Haney versus Loma, Fulton versus Inoue, Spence versus Crawford. Now Canelo versus Charlo pattern. You know what? Some of these guys just aren't active. And sometimes before we would get, Canelo was fighting at one point like 3 or 4 times a year, biggest guy in the sport. But a lot of these boxers, superstars, were fighting like once a year. So when you're not getting those big fights and you're not getting these deals done, it just extends to an extremely long time. What are your thoughts on this pattern? Because these are still big fights, but I mean, yeah, there is a layoff for a lot of those guys. Fulton had a long layoff. Josh Taylor had an extremely long layoff. So what are your thoughts on this, Brian?
So with Tank, he had taken the Hector Garcia fight, which was, I guess, a tune-up fight in retrospect, even though I think that was a little more competitive than people remember, until Tank eventually stopped him. That was in January. He fought in April against Ryan Garcia, who was going to take a tune-up that same month against, I think, Mercito Hesta. And that ended up not happening. Ryan Garcia goes into the fight having not fought the 9 months prior. So it was a longer layoff, but it wasn't like a year plus, where Fulton was over a year, Spence was over a year, Charlo's going to be over a year, and Canelo just fought in May. So he's going into this a little more than 4 because of the weeks, 4.5 months, we'll call it. Rested. And I think that Jermell Charlo, like, also moving up in weight is going to be a big thing, because that was one of the big things that was talked about. It's like not even just the layoff, just the weight. I think it was big for 154 anyway. You see that in person. He's taller. But yeah, I mean, if this fight turns out to be, to the comments point, was that Hustleman? To Hustleman's point, if this fight is going to be one-sided again, then yeah, you're going to have to look at future 50-50-ish bouts where they're like, and this one, I don't think is a 50-50. I think it's more of a 60-40. You could even argue 65-35, though I think Charlo will be somewhat competitive in it. You're going to have to look at these future fights and be like, okay, if one guy is coming off 4 months rest and the other one is 15 months, then yeah, you got to look at something there.
So in terms of what you're going to say before I cut you off, because I think you were like mid-thought before we went to Hustleman's comment. Do you remember what you were talking about?
Yeah, the weight gain. So the weight difference was a big topic for discussion. But also on the Canelo point, the fame point, real quick. There were a couple people like after we got done and we ended up leaving. There were a couple people on the block. There was a family. I don't know if they were British or Australian, and I'm not going to attempt to do the accent, but like a group of women. Who was that? You know what I mean? Like to try to know like who was going in the car, or whatever. I'm like, oh, Canelo Alvarez, he's a boxer, whatever, whatever. And then because they just want to know who is this big star in town attracting all this attention. And then there was a couple right behind them that asked me the same thing. So yeah, Canelo's out here turning heads, it seems. Jermell Charlo, the weight was a big thing. He did not want to talk about what his walking around weight is. That was the first question in the scrum, and he's like, I don't talk about my walk around weight. Which, okay, he's gonna move up 2 weight classes, and that's not the dangerous part of it, right? It is dangerous to some extent, but it's not the dangerous part of it. The dangerous part will be after presumably a loss, but after, where he tries to drop back down. You saw what happened to Kell Brook, Amir Khan, Roy Jones Jr. after. That's probably a discussion we can have later on. But Chantelle, what do you think of just the weight angle of this? Because a lot of people are, I guess, concerned about Jermell Charlo moving up 2 weight classes and then potentially coming back down for what looks to be a Terrence Crawford fight after at 154.
I mean, listen, we've seen people move up 1 weight class and have extreme difficulty going up 1 weight class where they're not the same. Their power doesn't transcend or whatnot. To go up 2 weight classes is crazy. And then to go back down, like that's going to be a toll on his body, I think. But I personally don't have any thoughts on it. Like Jermell's the one that's being extremely confident. Like, yo, I got this. So if he has it, then like, let's just see what he does with it. Right. I think this is going to be a competitive fight. I think Canelo's going to win, but I think Jermell is going to surprise some people. Some people think it's going to be a wash, but I mean, listen, Canelo didn't look like Canelo in his last fight, right?
He said that too.
Yeah, and he was coming off an injury and everything too. So, but I mean, those are my thoughts on it. That's all I kind of got to say about that weight thing, because I think people would want to see Jermell and Bud. I think that's a fight people would be interested in. But it seems like Jermell isn't worried about how much he actually cut or if he has to move up, because I think somewhere in the scrum that we have on our YouTube channel, you can go check it out, someone asked Jermell, what do you walk around in, like what's your weight? And he's like, I don't talk about that. I don't talk about my walk around weight. So I think he knows that obviously it's less on the body if you don't have to cut, right? Like it's easier for you if you don't got to cut down like 20-30 pounds, which is tough as hell. Then you're laughing. Like, imagine if he's walking around like he looks like a big guy. Like, he looks like he's like 185, 190. Like, he looks big. Jesus. I don't know if he's
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's that much, but look,
he looked big, cut, dude. Man. Yeah, like muscle mass, right? Like that's what I'm saying. It's not.
He's got to be. I assume he walks around in the 170s, 180s. Like I don't know about 180s. That may be a little bit of a stretch, but
you never know, man. He looked massive, so I don't know.
We're gonna go for another 5 more minutes or so. Comments, questions, super chats on the way out the door. Jermell Charlo, I don't think the weight is going to be an issue, at least coming up to it. But he is fighting Canelo Alvarez, who, I mean, he didn't knock out John Ryder, but he's still Canelo Alvarez. So let us know what you have on the way out the door before we get out of here.
Well, I think for Charlo, his biggest thing is he's got power, right? But I don't think he's going to outbox a guy like Canelo. Like, it's tough for me to see that. Do you think he can outbox Canelo?
Maybe this plays out to some degree like Gennady Golovkin and Kell Brook, although I don't think Canelo stops him that early, if he stops him at all. I think Kell Brook was competitive in that fight. As a matter of fact, Amir Khan was competitive against Canelo Alvarez early on, too, from a boxing standpoint, before he got absolutely flatlined with one of the best one-punch knockouts you're going to see. Like, those guys can be competitive early on when they're jumping up in 2 weight classes. Like, it's happened before. Yeah. Not in the case of Mikey Garcia against Errol Spence. It doesn't always happen, but it has happened before. And Jermell Charlo is clearly good enough, talented enough. do you want to be in a situation where you're going up 2 weight classes with ring rust against, of all people, Canelo Alvarez? Off a long layoff, and I just don't like, that's not favorable. But I admire him for trying to do it. His whole thing in the press conference, in the scrum, in interviews, even to Stephen A. Smith on First Take, is he's just daring to be great. That's how he framed it.
Yeah.
He's daring to be great.
And this is the biggest fight of his career, right? So it's
easily.
like, are you going to turn down the biggest payday of your career, the biggest fight of your career on this big of a stage? I don't think so. And listen, half the battle is confidence, right? It's mental, and Jermell seems focused. So, I mean, I think this is going to be an extremely good fight. I think some people are a little bit meh on it. Like, I don't know. Some people aren't that excited, but I think this is a great fight.
What's Jermell Charlo's best win to this point? Is it Tony Harrison, the response knockout that he's had? Yeah, so it's not even close that this is the biggest fight of his career. You know what I mean? Like, and he's beaten some good fighters. He's undisputed at his weight class.
Like,
He
not easy to do.
He talked about being on not being on the pound for pound list, which he should be at. And like, yeah, he should be on people's pound for pound list as an undisputed fighter. Now, the reason he's not there is because of inactivity. Which, I mean, I do think inactivity should be enforced. If you don't fight for a year, like, yeah, you should probably take a little bit of a hit for that. But he's going to step up and fight Canelo Alvarez, so it is what it is. Any last words before we get out of here?
No. What about you? I have no last words. Slow boxing week, so no last words for me.
Yeah, next week we're planning something fun. So we'll keep you posted on that. And we may or may not talk about this dud of an Alexander Usyk fight against Danny Dubois. I mean, we can if you want, but
we probably won't. But maybe we'll talk about it next week.
Like if there's an appetite for it, like, again, I tell you guys all the time, if you want us to do some shit and enough of you come together and actually say certain things, like, yeah, we'll do it. But the appetite for this Alexander Usyk fight, like, we'll see. And September, there's some stuff coming up, but the main sort of fight we're looking at now is Canelo Alvarez, Jermell Charlo, in terms of things that really can cross over. There are some good fights between now and then, but that's really the fight that we're looking at on the horizon. And we'll see if Regis Prograis versus Devin Haney actually gets made for October.
Thanks so much for rocking with us. By the way, if you want more live shows, let us know. Let us know if you like this time or if you rather us do an evening live as well. If you like the video, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks so much for rocking with us today. Definitely leave your comments if you're watching this after. And if you're listening to this on the audio side, make sure to leave a rate and review. We appreciate your support. And we'll be back with a very, very exciting week next week. Should we tell them what it kind of is, Bryan?
No, I don't want to spoil it because we want to hammer home the idea first. I will get to this comment, though, from my boy John. Says, Bryan, do people ever tell you kind of look like Ariel Helwani? And I have heard that before.
Oh, I never noticed that. Yeah, a little bit.
we have much different noses and hairlines. But yes, he has like a longer nose. I have like a fatter nose. You know what I mean? So, but I have been told that for. And look, I like Ariel Helwani's work. So,
and he's Canadian, so I'm with that.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, have a good night. Have a good evening. If you have any more topics that you want us to cover, you can drop them in the comments. But thank you so much for rocking with us. And remember, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back with some more content soon.